today we drive the most affordable EV sold in the country, ride the most popular 150cc commuter motorcycle in its newest avatar and spread some joy as the year comes to an end. Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I am Soini Dutt. Just 2 months ago, Tata Motors launched India's most affordable EV starting at 8.49 lakh rupees. That's the Tiago EV. Now, Bert got a chance to drive this EV recently in Goa and he tells you whether you should put your money on it.
Tata Motors' latest EV is also their first hatchback electric vehicle, and that's the Tiago EV. Now, this is based on the same Tiago platform, but this is part of the first gen or the Gen 1 range of electric vehicles that started life off with the Nexon EV. Then you had the Nexon EV Max, you had the Tigor as well. A month ago, Tata Motors announced the prices for the Tiago EV, starting off at 8.5 lakhs, which was very impressive. Now, this makes it also the most affordable electric hatchback you can get in the country. Now, the Tiago EV, well, it's got two battery pack options. There's the 19.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the medium range architecture. And then, of course, you have the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the long range battery pack. And the 19.2 kilowatt hour battery pack delivers around 60 horsepower, but the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack, well, that pumps up max power to about 74 horsepower. And that is the version I'm driving today. The more powerful one, the car with the larger range as well. The Tiago EV also has two regenerative modes. Now, you can select one of those with stronger or weaker recuperation by using two buttons that are placed right here on the dashboard, right under the infotainment system, which I found a bit curious because those could have easily been shifted to the steering wheel, and like you have most premium cars that give you the recuperation modes or other selectable recuperation modes using the paddle shift behind the steering wheel, Tata Motors could just have shifted those buttons onto the steering wheel over here itself alongside the audio control switches. Would have made life a little easier, but it's not very inconvenient. Now, those recuperative modes, well, you can shift from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 or cancel out all of them, come to level 0. What I liked about it is that even if you're in level 3, which is the strongest recuperative phase, the car doesn't really give you that jerky effect if you let go of the throttle pedal, which means drivability is still very smooth. Probably the smoothest I've ever experienced on any electric vehicle. Now, the Tiago EV uses a high voltage architecture, which means charging speeds are quite fast. There are multiple options how you can charge the Tiago EV. Simplest is, of course, to plug in the car to a 15 amp wall socket, and that will charge your car from a state of charge of 10% all the way up to 100% in about almost 9 hours. You could also plug in the wall box unit. That would also take you around 9 hours to get to 100% state of charge. On a DC charger at about 7.2 kilowatt, this battery will charge in about 3.5 hours, and you can charge at a maximum speed of about 50 kilowatts, in which case the battery pack would take a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, around 57 minutes to get to 100% state of charge. Now, the battery pack for the Tiago EV sits in the back, in the boot essentially, just below the rear seat, and what it does is that it does not leave space for a spare tire, so you don't have a spare in this car. Instead, that space is occupied by the battery pack. Now, because the battery pack is in the boot, the weight distribution is a 45-55, which means 45% of the weight comes from the front of the car, 55% of the weight is towards the rear. And does this alter dynamics? Well, not really, because Tata Motors have worked on the suspension, tweaked it in a way that it offers both good ride quality and the dynamics as well are stable. Is this a car that you could drive around with your family on long drives? Well, not really, because space is significantly constrained inside this cabin. There isn't a lot of boot space, and if you had to put anything more than a weekend's worth of luggage, well, you've got a problem. On the instrument cluster right behind the steering wheel, you get very basic information. You've got the state of charge and you've got the range. Now, I started the day with about 100% charge, at which point it showed me just about 220 kilometers of range. Here's the interesting part. Tata Motors' claimed efficiency with the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack is about 315 kilometers, but as sources inside mentioned this to me, that is under test cycles, and in real world conditions, well, 220 to 230 kilometers is the range that you will actually get. Similarly, if you had to go with the 19.2 kilowatt battery pack, the claimed range is about 250 kilometers. Real world should be anywhere between 160 to 170 kilometers of range. So my recommendation, of course, go in for the larger battery pack. Gets you better range, gets you better performance, and overall is the better hatchback to own. I quite like this car. It's a good city runabout. It's a good urban hatchback. The ride quality is very impressive. The driving feel is also very impressive. And it really takes you very little time to adjust to driving an electric vehicle of this sort. So if you wanted, well, to be one of those early adopters to move into the world of EVs, the Tiago EV is probably your best bet.
As Bert mentioned, this is the last of the Gen 1 EVs from Tata Motors. On that note, we'll take a very quick break here on the show. But coming up on the other side, we tell you all about the Bajaj Pulsar P150. Stay with us, you're watching Overdrive. Welcome back, you're watching Overdrive. Now, the 150cc motorcycle space has always been a popular one for commuter motorcyclists, and the Bajaj Pulsar undoubtedly has been one of the most popular choices amongst commuters. But Bajaj has now given the 150cc motorcycle an update, and let's see what's changed. It is now called the Bajaj Pulsar P150.
Now, if you live out here in India and you're into motorcycles, and for a matter of fact, if you've been around for as long as I have, which is over 30 years, yes, I'm not as young as I look, well, the name Pulsar will certainly ring a bell. That's because this brand from Bajaj has been around for more than 20 years. The first original Pulsar came out way back in 2002, and the last iteration of this epic motorcycle came out 2 years ago. Now, this model that we have out here today is called the P150. Now, how different is this motorcycle from the others in Bajaj's kitty? What makes it so unique? We're here to find out. So let's get to it. Now, to begin with, the P150 is an all-new Pulsar. That means you have an all-new engine, new chassis, and even the suspension setup is very different in comparison to the older Pulsar 150 model. Now, this one looks a lot leaner, sportier, and it's even shed a lot of weight over the older bike too. There are two variants of the P150 to choose from, the single disc variant and the dual disc variant. On the design front, the P150 looks very much the part of a modern day Bajaj motorcycle. Its design appears to have been inspired by the older N250 and N160 models, so now it has a very sleek, sporty edge to it. Both variants of the P150 get projector headlamps and LED DRLs up front, with the halogen bulb turn indicators. The taillight unit is a single split LED unit and keeps in line with the Pulsar lineage. Now, you also get a tiny fly screen ahead of the part analog, part digital display, which is standard across both variants, and a real highlight of this display has to be the amount of information it reads out. While the tachometer is analog, the digital side gives you a distance to empty readout and average fuel economy reading per trip, in addition to displaying the time, gear position, and fuel indication level. Both P150 variants also get a very conveniently located USB socket as well. The P150 sports all new alloy wheel designs, and the wheels themselves, which come dressed in MRF Zapper treads, well, they're a lot lighter in comparison to the older Pulsar. Now, this P150 also sports a monoshock suspension unit at the rear, which is the first for the standard 150cc Pulsar model, because if you remember right, Well, all the older bikes, they all came with dual spring shocks. The new P150 also gets an underbelly exhaust, unlike the side-slung exhaust cans on the older models. So this new engine from the P150, a derivative of the older N160, but the same bore and stroke as the previous generation 150cc Pulsar that came out 2 years ago. Now it is up on power compared to the older model, and its state of tune, well, this promises to be the most economical Pulsar of them all. Now the parts that really stand out on this P150 for me have to be 1, the new 150cc engine, and 2, the cradle frame that uses the motor as a stressed member. The engine is an all-new 2-valve air-cooled 150cc single-cylinder unit that's derived from the motor of the older N160. Unlike the older Pulsar model from before, this new bike features a single spark plug and not the DTSI tech as the older models. The 150cc motor has the same displacement as before, which is the same bore and stroke, but is fractionally up on power and torque, now making 14.5 PS of max power and 13.5 Nm of max torque. This new engine is a real gem. It's not as eager to accelerate as the NS and N series models, but it's nowhere close to feeling sluggish either. Another commendable aspect of this motor has to be its level of refinement, and that's a trait you wouldn't naturally associate with the Pulsar brand in the past. Redlining this bike feels really fun, and this bike feels totally up for it. And you get this positive feeling about it all, not just because of the way the engine manages to pull it off or the thrummy exhaust notes to go along with it, but also because this bike shows off some really impressive road manners. I have to say that this has to be the most comfortable Pulsar that I have ever ridden to date. The way the suspension is set up and the way you're seated on this bike, and including the seat as well. It all comes together really nicely on this motorcycle. Now, like the engine of the P150, the chassis out here too has been derived from the older Pulsar N160, and it's constructed from light composite materials. Now this, along with the new lightweight alloy wheels, makes the dual disc P150 weigh in at 141 kgs curb, while the single disc variant weighs a kg lighter. Now this is a massive 10 kgs of the older model and a good 13 kgs lighter than the Pulsar N160. And this chassis lends this bike a certain amount of agility, just makes it so easy to manage. The riding triangle on the dual disc P150 feels a tad sportier in comparison to the single disc variant on account of the split handlebars. But still, this bike is able to change direction so easily at all speeds, and it doesn't feel flustered in the bends too. It's so easy to drop a shoulder and tuck into a corner on this bike, and you'll really have a new definition of commuter motorcycle implanted in your brain after you ride this one. You'll be able to avoid most bumps and undulations on the road with this bike's maneuverability and efficient brakes. And even if you come across a couple of unavoidable undulations, well, the P150 suspension and seating will come to the rescue. The only thing you'll have to be wary of is the bike bottoming out over speed breakers once you have a pillion aboard. So as far as ride and handling goes, the P150 definitely has a lot going for it. And as far as fuel efficiency goes, well, Bajaj are claiming that the single disc variant will return 49 kmpl out in the real world, with the dual disc model offering a couple of kilometers less. But that's something we'll have to test out when we spend some more quality time with this bike. The Pulsar P150 might be positioned as the most commuter-friendly 150cc Pulsar there is out there currently, but in truth, it offers a lot more than just that. It still has that element of sportiness that I'm sure Pulsar fanboys will really appreciate. Now, the older model will still be on sale for some time and gradually be phased out with the P150 replacement, and man, what a worthy replacement it is.
Well, do let us know what you think of this particular motorcycle on our YouTube channel. Do drop in a comment. We'll take a very quick break here on the show, but coming up on the other side, it's time to share some Christmas cheer. Welcome back here with us on Overdrive. It's December, and that means it's not only time to be grateful for all that we have, but it's also time to share some happiness, put smiles on faces, and Bert decided to spread some Christmas cheer. Let's take a look.
It's been a long-standing dream of mine to give back to society in some small way. Now this happens to be the Christmas season, the season of giving. And what better time of the year than to do something for those underprivileged people, part of society that don't have as much as probably we do. So somewhere down the line, I've probably written a letter to Santa Claus asking him for a little help in this endeavor. And guess what? My prayers were answered because Skoda Auto India have come to the rescue and helped me fulfill this dream of mine. I am here today with the Skoda Kushaq Monte Carlo edition and the Slavia, and we are going to do something very special for a select group of children. Something that is going to touch your heart as much as it has touched mine. So today we are headed to an orphanage to give those children out there a very special time. We're going to celebrate Christmas Day with them, have a small party, give them a few gifts and make them feel good this festive season. The Kushaq's got a massive boot, 385 litres when the seats are all upright. But when the seats are folded down, that increases to 1400 plus litres of boot volume. Santa's little helper is on the way. So what we're doing today is heading out to a small orphanage for girls, a children's home for girls, where underprivileged, destitute, orphaned children are taken care of and provided the means and opportunities to get ahead in life. Now, we're just headed there to give them another day of small joys, to have a small party with them, give them a few gifts and spend some time with them, which is the most important thing. You want to spend time. Another very relevant aspect to the Kushaq is the fact that this was one of the first cars to get a 5-star rating, safety rating from Global NCAP for both adult and, very importantly, child protection. I must thank Skoda for having helped us do this, having brought this joy to these kids' faces. We've given them a few small snacks to eat, we're playing a few games with them, we've sung some songs, and of course now they're going to be drawing as well. So it's a nice day to have spent here with these children. It definitely humbles us to know the privileges that we come from may not be available to everybody else. So I think what we've done today is something that has brought a lot of joy to me as well. To all of my friends over here, to all my colleagues over here who are with me today as well. Everyone's been happy to do this, something that we've never done before. So yes, thank you to Skoda and great work. So we've had a fantastic time. The kids have had a better time than we did. They've really enjoyed this. But now it's time to give one very special person a ride back home. A very hot ride back home. Because he's got a hot set of wheels. Santa, let's go. At the end of the day, so if I had to take Santa and his elves for a ride, this blazing red fits the bill, does it not?
Well, with that, it's time for us to wrap up this week's edition of Overdrive. But remember, you can stay in touch with the team through Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And you can follow our latest updates on Instagram. And before we wrap up, let me wish you all a very happy Christmas.